The stars looked different from Ceti Alpha 7. Admiral Kian Arlen often found himself staring at the unfamiliar constellations, searching for the patterns that reminded him of home. Earth was merely a memory now, a faded blue dot lost among billions of other worlds that made up the vast galactic alliance. Few remembered that humans had once been feared across the stars. Fewer still knew the true extent of Earth's military might at its peak. Kian's weathered hands trembled slightly as he poured himself a glass of synthetic whiskey. Retirement didn't suit him, but after 43 years of service in what remained of Earth's defense forces, even he had to admit it was time to step aside. His small dwelling on the outskirts of New Seattle Colony provided a perfect view of the twin moons that orbited Ceti Alpha 7, casting an eerie blue glow across the terraformed landscape. The quiet life should have been peaceful. It wasn't. The nightmares still came. Visions of Earth's last great war. The one that had broken humanity's dominance and relegated them to just another species struggling to maintain relevance in an indifferent universe. The screams of dying men and women, the flash of plasma cannons, the terrible silence that followed. "Computer, display latest Alliance news," Kian commanded, his voice still carrying the authority of an admiral, despite his civilian clothes. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the usual propaganda: trade agreements with the Andorian Confederacy, diplomatic tensions with the Zentari, a new recreational planet opening in the Orion Belt. Nothing that actually mattered. Kian was about to shut off the display when a small news item caught his attention. Unexplained signal detected from Sol System. Alliance security investigating possible pirate activity near abandoned Earth territories. His heart skipped a beat. Earth territories weren't abandoned, not technically. There were still human settlements there, descendants of those who refused to leave after the Exodus. But they were supposed to be primitive, barely capable of interplanetary communication, let alone sending signals that could be detected across Alliance space. The quiet evening was interrupted by the harsh sound of his communications terminal. No one called him anymore, except for the occasional fellow veteran or his daughter, Elise, who had built a life for herself on Proxima Centauri 2. "Accept call," Kian said, setting down his drink. Instead of his daughter's face, the stern visage of Fleet Commander Talos appeared. Kian had served under him briefly before retiring, a capable officer, if somewhat politically ambitious. "Admiral Arlen," Talos said, his voice tense. "Forgive the intrusion." Kian straightened instinctively. "Commander, this is unexpected. We have a situation that requires your historical expertise." Talos's choice of words was careful. "How quickly can you be ready to travel?" "Travel? I've been retired for 3 years, Commander." "This isn't a request I make lightly. Admiral." Talos lowered his voice. "We've intercepted communications from the Zirk Empire. They're mobilizing a fleet toward the Sol System. The Zirk, a powerful expansionist species from the Outer Rim. Kian had encountered them only once during his service, a brief skirmish that ended in a stalemate. They had been expanding their territory steadily since then, conquering smaller worlds and forcing them into their collective. "Why would they care about Earth?" Kian asked, though a sinking feeling in his stomach told him he already knew the answer. "That's what we need to find out. A transport will arrive for you in 3 hours. Pack for an extended deployment." Talos's image flickered. "And Admiral, this is classified. Alpha level." The communication ended abruptly, leaving Kian staring at his own reflection in the blank screen. Alpha level classification meant this went all the way to the highest echelons of the Alliance government. Something had spooked them badly. He moved with practiced efficiency, pulling out his old service bag from storage. As he packed, his mind raced through possibilities. The Zirk had no historical quarrel with Earth. Humanity had been a declining power by the time they made first contact. There was nothing of value left in the Sol system that would interest a major power like the Zirk Empire. Unless… Kian paused, a folded uniform in his hands. Unless they had found something. Something that should have remained hidden. He reached for a small box at the back of his closet, secured with a biometric lock. Inside was a simple metallic disc, unassuming except for the faint Earth Defense Force insignia etched into its surface. It had been given to him by his own commander the day Earth officially joined the Galactic Alliance, surrendering its military autonomy in exchange for protection. "Keep this safe," Admiral Zhang had told him. "And remember the old saying, they think the sleeping giant is dead until they hear the drums of war." At the time, Kian had dismissed it as the nostalgic ramblings of an old warrior unable to accept their new reality. Now, he wasn't so sure. He slipped the disc into a hidden pocket in his bag and continued packing. 3 hours later, a sleek Alliance shuttle landed outside his dwelling. 2 officers in standard gray uniforms approached his door, their expressions neutral. "Admiral Arlen, Commander Talos sent us. We're to escort you to the Hyperion." The Hyperion. The Alliance flagship. Whatever was happening, it was serious enough to involve the most powerful vessel in the fleet. Kian nodded, shouldering his bag. "Lead the way." The journey to the orbital station was brief and silent. The officers maintained a respectful distance, but Kian could sense their curiosity. He was a relic of a bygone era, a reminder of Earth's former glory. As they approached the massive form of the Hyperion in orbit, Kian felt a pang of professional admiration. The vessel was nearly 3 kilometers long, a marvel of engineering that combined technologies from a dozen different species. Yet even this behemoth paled in comparison to what Earth had once commanded. They docked smoothly, and Kian was immediately escorted to the command deck. Commander Talos was waiting, surrounded by his senior staff and several civilians in formal diplomatic attire. "Admiral Arlen," Talos greeted him, extending a hand. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." Kian shook the offered hand. "You didn't leave me much choice. Commander, now, perhaps you can explain what's going on." Talos gestured toward a conference room adjacent to the bridge. "Please, this way. We have much to discuss." The room was secured as soon as the doors closed behind them. A holographic display dominated the center of the table, showing the Sol system and the surrounding sectors. Several red markers indicated the position of what Kian assumed were Zirk vessels. 3 days ago, our long-range sensors detected unusual activity in the abandoned Earth defense grid. Talos began without preamble. At first, we thought it was a glitch in our monitoring systems. Then this was broadcast across all frequencies. He activated the display, and a distorted audio message played through the room's speakers. The sleeping giant protocol initiated. Perimeter breach detected. All dormant units prepare for reactivation. This is not a drill. The message repeated 3 times before dissolving into static. Kian felt the blood drain from his face. "The sleeping giant protocol," he whispered. "It's actually real." One of the diplomats, an elegant woman with the distinctive silver hair of the Pleiadian species, leaned forward. "You recognize this protocol, Admiral?" "It was a contingency plan, a legend, really. I never thought." Kian composed himself. After the Proxima Centauri conflict, when Earth's military power was at its peak, there were rumors of a failsafe system, a hidden fleet, automated defense platforms, weapons caches, all placed in dormant mode, scattered throughout the Sol system and beyond, insurance, in case humanity ever faced extinction. "And you believe this system has been activated?" the Pleiadian asked. "If it has, Then something has triggered it. The system was designed to remain dormant unless Earth faced an existential threat. Kian looked at Talos. The Zirk fleet, how large is it? Talos's expression darkened. Initial scans suggest over 300 vessels, a full invasion force. Why would they invade a dead world? Another diplomat asked. Earth isn't dead, Kian replied. Just forgotten. There are still millions of humans living there, most of them descendants of those who refused to leave during the Exodus. They've regressed technologically, but they're still our people. The Zirk Emperor, Lord Zorak, has made no secret of his disdain for what he calls legacy worlds, planets with historical significance but limited strategic value. Talos explained. His empire has been systematically claiming such worlds, erasing their history and replacing it with Zirk monuments. Cultural annihilation, Kian muttered. But why now? Earth has been irrelevant for centuries. The room fell silent. Finally, Talos spoke again. There's something else. Our intelligence suggests the Zirk have discovered references to Earth's military capabilities at its height. They believe there may be technology still hidden on Earth or within the Sol system. Technology they want for themselves. And if they find it? Kian asked, though he already knew the answer. Then the balance of power in the galaxy shifts dramatically. The Pleiadian diplomat answered. The Alliance cannot allow that to happen. So this isn't about protecting Earth or its people, Kian said bitterly. It's about making sure no one gets their hands on our old weapons. The Alliance Council has authorized a diplomatic mission to intercept the Zirk fleet. Talos continued, ignoring Kian's comment. We will attempt to negotiate. If that fails, he left the implication hanging. And where do I fit into this? Kian asked. You're one of the few remaining officers with direct knowledge of Earth's defense systems from that era. If the sleeping giant protocol is real, and if it has been activated, we need to know what we're dealing with. Kian laughed without humor. You want me to help you neutralize Earth's last line of defense? We want to prevent a war, the Pleiadian diplomat interjected. A war that humanity would surely lose, given your current standing in the galaxy. The truth of her words stung. Humanity was a fractured species now, scattered across dozens of colonies, their homeworld a fading memory. They had no unified military, no central government, just the protection of the Alliance, protection that came with strings attached. The Hyperion will depart for the Sol system in 6 hours. Talos said, You have until then to decide if you'll help us. Either way, you'll be coming along. The Council was very clear about that. With that, the meeting was adjourned. Kian was shown to guest quarters, luxurious by military standards, but still a cage. He sat on the edge of the bed, removing the small disc from his bag. The old saying echoed in his mind. They think the sleeping giant is dead until they hear the drums of war. What if the drums were already beating? He activated the disc, placing it on a flat surface. A holographic interface appeared, requesting biometric confirmation. Kian pressed his thumb against the scanner, and the device hummed to life. Identity confirmed. Admiral Kian Arlen, Earth Defense Force. Security clearance, Omega level. Accessing sleeping giant protocol archives. The hologram expanded, showing detailed schematics of weapons systems, defense platforms, and fleet formations that Kian had never seen before. This wasn't just a contingency plan. It was an entire shadow military, hidden from the official records. And according to the data streaming before his eyes, it was waking up. A soft chime indicated someone at his door. Kian quickly deactivated the disc and concealed it. Enter, he called. The door slid open to reveal a young woman in a science officer's uniform. She had the distinctive features of someone born on one of the low-gravity colonies, taller than average, with an almost ethereal grace to her movements. "Admiral Arlen, I'm Dr. Alara Morn, Xenoarchaeology Division. I hope I'm not disturbing you." Kian gestured for her to enter. "Not at all. Dr. Morn, what can I do for you?" She hesitated, then stepped inside, allowing the door to close behind her. "I've been studying the signal that activated the sleeping giant protocol. There's something unusual about it." "Unusual how?" "It didn't originate from Earth, or anywhere in the Sol system. It came from the direction of the Zirk Empire." Kian frowned. "That doesn't make sense. Why would the Zirk activate an Earth defense system?" "I don't think they did it intentionally," Alara said. "I think they found something. An old Earth outpost, perhaps, and triggered the system without realizing it." "Or someone wanted them to find it," Kian mused. "Someone who knew what would happen." Alara nodded. "That's what I believe as well. And there's more. The signal contained encrypted data packets that our systems can't decode. But they were definitely of Earth origin, using quantum encryption methods that haven't been seen in centuries." "Why are you telling me this?" Kian asked, studying her carefully. "Shouldn't you be reporting to Commander Talos?" "I did. He dismissed it as irrelevant to our mission." Her expression hardened. "But I've spent my career studying ancient Earth technology. This isn't irrelevant. It could be the key to understanding what we're facing." Kian made a decision. "Dr. Morn, what I'm about to show you is classified beyond anything you've encountered before. If you report this to anyone, I'll deny everything." He activated the disk again, allowing the holographic display to fill the room. Alara's eyes widened as she took in the information. "This is incredible," she whispered. "We had no idea Earth possessed technology this advanced." "Few did," Kian replied. "Most of these systems were theoretical when I was active in the service, but according to this data, they were built and deployed in secret." "But why hide it? Earth could have maintained its position in the galaxy with this kind of firepower." "Politics," Kian said simply. "After the Proxima Centauri conflict, there was a strong anti-military sentiment among Earth's leadership. They wanted to join the Alliance, become part of the galactic community. Military supremacy didn't fit that narrative." Alara moved closer to one of the holographic displays, studying a massive orbital platform. "These defense systems, if they're still operational, they could repel the Zirk fleet." "If they're operational," Kian emphasized, "and if they're still controlled by Earth, after all this time, who knows what condition they're in, or who might have found them." A sudden realization struck him. "The Zirk aren't invading Earth. They're running from something." "What do you mean?" "Think about it. They discover an old Earth outpost, trigger the sleeping giant protocol, and immediately send a fleet to the Sol system. They're not looking to conquer. They're trying to reach whatever awakened before it becomes fully operational." Alara considered this. "If you're right, then we're heading into something much bigger than a simple border dispute." "We need allies," Kian said. "People who understand what's at stake." "I might know someone who can help," Alara offered. "Roan Darvok. He served in Earth's last military campaign before the Alliance Treaty. He's on board as a security consultant for the diplomatic team." "Darvok? I know him. Good soldier, if a bit reckless." Kian nodded. "Bring him here. Quietly. And see if you can find any information on the current state of Earth's surface colonies. We need to know what we're heading into." As Alara left to find Darvok, Kian returned to the holographic display. According to the data, the sleeping giant protocol had deployed assets throughout the Sol system and beyond: automated factories on Mars, defense platforms in the asteroid belt, monitoring stations on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, all dormant until now. And at the heart of it all, Earth itself. Home. Kian had not set foot on Earth in over 20 years. The planet had changed since the Exodus, with nature reclaiming many of the abandoned cities. The remaining human population had formed small, isolated communities, mostly in regions that could sustain agriculture without advanced technology. The thought of the Zirk fleet descending on those defenseless settlements filled him with dread. Whatever Earth's hidden defenses might be, they wouldn't be enough to protect everyone. The door chimed again, and Alara returned with a burly man whose face bore the scars of old battles. Roan Darvok had aged since Kian last saw him, but his eyes still held the sharp intelligence that had made him a formidable special operations officer. "Admiral," Darvok greeted him with a respectful nod. "It's been a long time." "Too long, Commander," Kian replied, falling back into old habits. "Though I understand it's just Mr. Darvok now. We all have to move on eventually." Darvok's gaze fell on the holographic display. "Though some secrets never die, it seems." "Dr. Morn has briefed you?" "Enough to know we're heading into a shitstorm that the Alliance isn't prepared for." Darvok crossed his arms. "The Zirk are no joke. Admiral, I've seen what they did to the Centauri colonies on the Outer Rim. They don't leave survivors. Which is why we need to reach Earth before they do," Kian said. "If the Sleeping Giant Protocol has indeed activated dormant Earth defense systems, we need to ensure they're under our control, not theirs." "And how do you propose we do that?" Darvok asked. "In case you haven't noticed, we're on an Alliance vessel with a commander who's more concerned about political fallout than protecting Earth." "We're going to need help from the inside," Kian said, turning to Alara. "Doctor, what have you found about Earth's current status?" Alara activated her own data pad, projecting a map of Earth with various settlements highlighted. According to the most recent surveys, there are approximately 20 million humans still living on Earth, spread across these regions. Most have reverted to pre-industrial technology, though a few enclaves maintain limited spaceflight capability for resource gathering. "Any military presence?" Darvok asked. "Nothing organized. Local militias at best." Kian studied the map. "What about here?" He pointed to a region in the northern hemisphere where no settlements were indicated. Alara zoomed in on the area. "That's the old Earth Defense Force command complex in what was once called the Rocky Mountains. It was abandoned during the Exodus. Orbital scans show no activity there for over a century. Perfect place to hide something you don't want found," Darvok commented. "Exactly," Kian agreed. "And I'd bet my last credit that's where the control systems for the Sleeping Giant Protocol are located. We need to get there, preferably without the Alliance or the Zirk knowing what we're up to." "The Hyperion will be heavily monitored," Alara pointed out. "Any unauthorized departures would be detected immediately." "Then we'll need a distraction," Kian said, looking at Darvok. "Something that would require the Alliance to send a small team to the surface." A slow smile spread across Darvok's scarred face. "I might have just the thing. The diplomatic team is planning to make contact with Earth's surface communities before the Zirk arrive. Standard protocol when dealing with primitive societies. And you're on the security detail," Kian guessed. "Lead consultant," Darvok confirmed. "I get to recommend team composition and equipment, including transportation." "That could work," Alara said, excitement creeping into her voice. "But we'd still need someone with technical expertise who could interface with the old Earth systems." "I believe you've just volunteered, Doctor," Kian said with a hint of a smile. "Unless your expertise in xenoarchaeology doesn't extend to operating ancient Earth technology." Alara straightened. "I'm the foremost expert on pre-Alliance Earth technology in the entire diplomatic corps. Admiral, If anyone can reactivate those systems, it's me. Then it's settled, Kian said, deactivating the holographic display. Darvok, make the necessary arrangements for the diplomatic mission. Dr. Morn, gather any equipment you think might be useful. We'll need to move quickly once we reach the Sol system. As they prepared to leave, Darvok paused at the door. Admiral, there's one more thing you should know. There's a rumor circulating among the crew. They're saying that long-range sensors have detected energy signatures consistent with old Earth warships in the outer Sol system. Ships that shouldn't exist anymore. Kian's expression remained neutral, but his heart raced. Thank you for the information, Commander. Let's hope the rumors are just that. After they left, Kian sat alone in his quarters, contemplating what lay ahead. If the rumors were true, if Earth's ancient warships were reactivating, then the situation was even more volatile than he had imagined. The Alliance would view such a development as a threat to the established order. The Zirk would see it as confirmation of their fears about Earth's hidden power. And humanity, fractured and scattered across the stars, would be caught in the middle of a conflict that could determine their fate for centuries to come. Kian reached for the metal disc again, accessing a secure communication protocol buried deep within its systems. If there were still active Earth Defense Force assets out there, they would be monitoring this frequency. This is Admiral Kian Arlen, Earth Defense Force, security clearance Omega level. He spoke clearly into the device. To any Earth forces receiving this transmission, the Sleeping Giant protocol has been activated. The drums are beating. I am en route to Earth aboard the Alliance vessel Hyperion. Will attempt to reach Old Command Complex upon arrival. Authentication code: Sierra Echo, Golf 21947. Arlen out. He had no way of knowing if anyone had received his message, but for the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope. Earth might not be the power it once was, but perhaps it wasn't as defenseless as everyone believed. The Hyperion entered hyperspace 6 hours later, its destination the Sol system, and whatever awaited them there. The journey to Earth would take 3 days at maximum hyperspace velocity. Kian spent most of that time reviewing the data from the disk, memorizing the locations of key installations and the command codes that might still work after all these years. On the second day, Commander Talos summoned him to the bridge. The commander looked tense, his usual composure slipping. Admiral, we've received disturbing news from our advanced scouts, Talos said without preamble. The Zirk fleet has accelerated their approach to the Sol system. They'll arrive within 24 hours, almost the same time as us. Have they responded to hails? Kian asked. Only with a formal declaration of their intent to cleanse the cradle of human infection. Talos replied grimly. Diplomatic options appear limited. The Zirk were never known for their subtlety, Kian commented. What's the Alliance's response? The Council has authorized defensive measures to protect Earth's remaining population. We're to evacuate as many as possible before the Zirk arrive. It was more than Kian had expected from the notoriously self-interested Alliance Council. That's commendable. Don't mistake political calculation for altruism. Admiral, Talos said sharply. The optics of allowing the human homeworld to be destroyed would be problematic for the Council's leadership. This is about maintaining the Alliance's image as protectors of all member species. Of course, Kian agreed, keeping his expression neutral. How can I assist with the evacuation efforts? Your knowledge of Earth's geography and population centers will be valuable in planning extraction points. And Talos hesitated. If there's anything you haven't told us about Earth's defensive capabilities, now would be the time. Kian met the commander's gaze steadily. I've shared everything I know officially. Commander, The rest is speculation and old soldiers' tales. Talos clearly didn't believe him, but he didn't press the issue. Very well. Join the tactical team in Planning Room 3. They're finalizing the evacuation strategy now. As Kian turned to leave, Talos added, "And Admiral? I understand Mr. Darvok has requested you and Dr. Morn for his surface team. Given your expertise, I've approved the request. You'll deploy to the surface as soon as we reach Earth orbit." "Thank you, Commander," Kian said, hiding his surprise. He had expected more resistance to their plan. "Don't thank me yet," Talos replied. "The Hyperion will remain in orbit for only 48 hours. After that, we withdraw, with or without the surface teams. The Alliance won't risk the flagship in a direct confrontation with the Zirk fleet." The implication was clear. They would be on their own if they couldn't complete their mission quickly. Kian acknowledged the order and left the bridge, heading directly to find Darvok and Alara. He found them in one of the ship's labs, where Alara was testing various pieces of equipment. Darvok stood nearby, checking over a collection of weapons that he had somehow managed to requisition. "We're cleared for the surface mission," Kian informed them. "But we have a complication. The Zirk will reach Earth at approximately the same time we do, and we only have 48 hours before the Hyperion withdraws. That doesn't give us much time to locate the command complex and reactivate the sleeping giant systems," Alara said, frowning. "Then we'll have to be efficient," Darvok replied, handing Kian a compact pulse rifle. "I've secured us a long-range shuttle, officially for surveying multiple settlement sites. Should give us enough range to reach the command complex without raising suspicions." "What about the evacuation efforts?" Alara asked. "Won't they notice if we're not where we're supposed to be?" "The evacuation teams will be spread thin, trying to cover as much ground as possible," Kian explained. "As long as we check in regularly, they shouldn't realize we've gone off mission." "And if they do?" Darvok raised an eyebrow. "Then we'd better have some good news to report," Kian said grimly, "like a way to repel the Zirk fleet." The final hours of their journey passed in tense preparation. The Hyperion dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, immediately deploying sensor drones to monitor the approaching Zirk fleet. Kian stood on the observation deck, gazing at the distant blue dot that was Earth. After so many years away, the sight of his homeworld stirred emotions he had thought long buried. "It's strange, isn't it?" Ilara's voice came from behind him. "Seeing the birthplace of our species as just another planet." "Earth was never just another planet," Kian replied without turning. "Even at our lowest point, there was something special about it, something worth fighting for." "Is that why you stayed in the Defense Force after the Exodus? To protect what was left?" Kian finally turned to face her. "I stayed because I believed humanity still had a role to play in the galaxy. Not as conquerors, not as refugees, but as equals. The Alliance never saw us that way." "And now?" Alara asked. "Now we remind them why Earth was once feared and respected across the stars." Kian's expression hardened. "The Zirk want to erase our history. We're going to give them a history lesson instead." A ship-wide announcement interrupted their conversation. "All evacuation teams report to Shuttle Bay 3, planetfall in 30 minutes. Repeat. All evacuation teams to Shuttle Bay 3. "That's our cue," Kian said. "Is everything ready?" Alara nodded. "I've packed all the equipment I think we'll need. Darvok has secured our transportation and created a false mission profile that should keep the command staff from asking too many questions." "Good, let's go." They made their way to the shuttle bay, where organized chaos reigned as dozens of teams prepared for deployment to different regions of Earth. Darvok was waiting beside a sleek atmospheric shuttle, larger than the others and clearly designed for extended missions. "All set?" he asked as they approached. "As ready as we'll ever be," Kian replied, boarding the shuttle. "What's our cover story?" Advance reconnaissance for secondary evacuation sites, Darvok explained, taking the pilot's seat. We're supposed to be evaluating settlement clusters in the northern continental region. Should give us enough leeway to reach the command complex without raising alarms. Alara secured her equipment in the shuttle's storage compartments. What about the locals? The Earth settlements may not be welcoming to off-worlders. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, Kian said. For now, let's focus on reaching the command complex. The shuttle bay doors opened, revealing Earth in all its blue and green glory. Despite the centuries of neglect, the planet still possessed a beauty that took Kian's breath away. Shuttle Delta 7, you are cleared for launch, came the controller's voice over the comm system. Good luck down there. Acknowledged. Control, Darvok responded. Delta 7 departing. The shuttle glided out of the bay and began its descent toward Earth's atmosphere. As they broke through the cloud cover, the landscape below came into sharper focus. Vast forests had reclaimed much of what had once been urban areas. Nature healing the scars left by civilization. Darvok plotted a course toward the northern continent, specifically the mountain range that had once housed Earth's military command center. According to the ancient maps, the facility had been built deep within the mountains, hardened against even the most devastating attacks. Picking up some unusual energy readings, Alara reported, studying the shuttle's sensors. Consistent with old Earth technology, but much stronger than I would have expected after all this time. The sleeping giant protocol must have reactivated power systems throughout the planet, Kian surmised. That's a good sign. It means the infrastructure is still intact. Or someone's been maintaining it, Darvok suggested. Those settlement surveys showed some of the Earth colonies retained higher technology levels than others. What if some of them have been keeping the old systems running? It was a possibility Kian hadn't considered. If that's true, we might find allies down there instead of just abandoned machinery. As they approached the mountain range, the shuttle's communication system crackled with an incoming transmission. Unidentified aircraft. You are entering restricted airspace. Identify yourself immediately or face defensive measures. The three exchanged shocked glances. Defensive measures? Alara whispered. From pre-industrial settlements? This is Admiral Kian Arlen, Earth Defense Force. Kian responded to the transmission. Security clearance Omega level. Authentication code. Sierra Echo Golf 2197. We are responding to the sleeping giant protocol activation. There was a long pause. Then, authentication confirmed. Admiral, transmitting approach vector for secure landing zone. Welcome home. Sir. A set of coordinates appeared on their navigation system, directing them to a narrow valley hidden between two towering peaks. I'll be damned, Darvok muttered, adjusting their course. Someone's definitely been keeping the lights on. The shuttle descended into the valley, which appeared to be a natural formation until a section of the mountainside slid away, revealing a massive hangar carved into the rock. Darvok guided the shuttle inside, setting it down on a landing pad that still bore the faded insignia of the Earth Defense Force. As the mountain closed behind them, a pressurization sequence initiated, filling the hangar with breathable atmosphere. A group of figures approached the shuttle, dressed in uniforms that were unmistakably military, but of a design Kian didn't recognize. A modern adaptation of the old Earth Defense Force uniform. Perhaps. I think we just found our allies, Kian said, moving toward the shuttle's exit ramp. The reception committee stood at attention as Kian, Darvok, and Alara descended from the shuttle. A woman stepped forward, her bearing unmistakably that of a seasoned officer. Admiral Arlen, she said, saluting crisply. Commander Serena Vallis, Earth Defense Force Special Operations. We've been expecting you. Kian returned the salute automatically. Commander, I must admit, I wasn't expecting such a organized welcome. The Earth Defense Force never dissolved. Admiral, Valis explained. We simply went underground when the Exodus began. For generations, we've maintained the systems, trained new personnel, and waited for the day when humanity would need us again. And that day has come, Kian said grimly. The Zirk fleet will reach Earth within hours. We know, Valis replied. Our long-range sensors detected their approach 3 days ago. That's when the sleeping giant protocol activated automatically. You didn't trigger it? Alara asked, surprised. No, Dr. Morn. The protocol is designed to activate in response to specific threat patterns. The Zirk fleet matched those parameters. Valis gestured for them to follow. We should continue this discussion in the command center. The general will want to brief you personally. As they followed Valis through the facility, Kian was struck by how well-maintained everything was. This wasn't an abandoned relic. It was a fully operational military base, with personnel moving purposefully through corridors that hummed with power and technology. How many of you are there? Darvok asked, clearly impressed. Here at the main complex, about 2,000 personnel. Valis answered, worldwide, across all installations, close to 50,000. Not a large force by historical standards, but we've focused on quality over quantity. And the civilians on the surface? Kian inquired. The settlements we detected from orbit? Most are unaware of our existence, Valis said. We maintain minimal contact, primarily through operatives who live among them. They believe we're just another settlement, albeit more technologically advanced. They reached a massive set of doors emblazoned with the Earth Defense Force insignia. Valis placed her hand on a scanner, and the doors slid open to reveal a command center bustling with activity. Holographic displays showed the Sol system, with the approaching Zirk fleet highlighted in red and the Alliance forces in blue. At the center of it all stood a tall, distinguished man whose uniform bore the insignia of a general. He turned as they entered, his weathered face breaking into a smile of recognition. Kian Arlen, he said, his voice warm despite the tense situation. You're a sight for sore eyes. Kian stared in disbelief. General Zhang? But you died. The official record said you were killed during the Proxima Centauri conflict. The official records say a lot of things, Admiral, Zhang replied with a wry smile. Most of them convenient fictions to keep the Alliance content that Earth was no longer a military power. He extended a hand, which Kian grasped firmly. It's good to see you, sir. And you, Kian, though I wish the circumstances were better. Zhang turned his attention to the others. Commander Darvok, Dr. Morn, welcome to Earth Defense Command. I apologize for the secrecy, but we've had to operate in the shadows for a very long time. General, Kian began, the Alliance believes Earth is defenseless. They're planning an evacuation before the Zirk arrive. A noble gesture, but unnecessary, Zhang replied, gesturing to the holographic display. The sleeping giant is awake, Admiral, and it's ready for battle. The display shifted to show the Sol system in greater detail. Throughout the system, red dots began to appear, dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. Defense platforms in the asteroid belt, Zhang explained. Automated factories on Mars and the moons of Jupiter, stealth satellites in orbit around Earth, and the crown jewel. He tapped a control, and the display zoomed in on a region of space beyond Neptune's orbit. A fleet of warships, larger than anything Kian had ever seen, was moving into formation. Ships that shouldn't exist. Ships that had supposedly been decommissioned or destroyed centuries ago. The Seventh Fleet, Zhang said with pride. 300 capital ships, 2,000 support vessels, all with technology that was classified beyond top secret, even during Earth's height of power. They've been in dormant mode, hidden in the Kuiper Belt, maintained by automated systems and skeleton crews rotated in from Earth every decade. This is... Alara was at a loss for words. This changes everything. Indeed it does. Doctor. Zhang agreed. The question now is how we deploy these assets. The Zirk are coming with the intent to destroy Earth. The Alliance is here ostensibly to help. But we all know they'll turn on us the moment they realize Earth's military power has been restored. We need to coordinate, Kian said. The Alliance vessel I arrived on, the Hyperion, isn't just any ship. It's their flagship. If we can convince Commander Talos that cooperation is in everyone's best interest. Talos? Zhang's expression darkened. Mikhail Talos. You know him? Kian asked, surprised. His father was an alliance negotiator during the treaty that ended Earth's independence. Zhang explained. A hardliner who pushed for complete dismantling of Earth's military. The son appears to have followed in his footsteps. Talos isn't our primary concern right now, Darvok interjected. The Zirk will be here within hours. We need to prepare for battle. Commander Darvok is right. Zhang agreed. We can deal with the Alliance after we've handled the immediate threat. He turned to a communications officer. Contact the 7th Fleet. Tell Admiral Chung to move into defensive positions around Earth and activate all planetary defense systems. Yes, General, the officer responded. Zhang faced Kian again. Admiral, I know you've been out of active service for some time, but I could use your expertise. The 7th Fleet needs a coordination officer for its fighter squadrons. Someone who understands both our technology and modern tactics. Kian straightened. It would be an honor, General. Commander Darvok, Zhang continued. Your special operations background would be invaluable for our ground defense teams. If the Zirk manage to land forces, they won't get far, Darvok promised grimly. And Dr. Morn, Zhang turned to Alara. Commander Valis will show you to our research division. Your knowledge of xenoarchaeology might help us understand the Zirk better, particularly why they've chosen to attack now, after all this time. Alara nodded. I'll do everything I can, General. Then we have our assignments. Zhang concluded. The next few hours will determine the fate of Earth, and perhaps humanity as a whole. Let's make sure the drums of war beat for our victory, not our demise. As they dispersed to their respective posts, Kian felt a mix of emotions, pride in Earth's resilience, determination to face the coming battle, and a creeping doubt about what would come after. If Earth emerged victorious, how would the Alliance respond to this revelation of hidden power? And what role would humanity play in a galaxy that had long since dismissed them as irrelevant? Those were questions for tomorrow. Today, they had a war to win. Kian was escorted to a communications center specially designed for fighter coordination. The technology was a fascinating blend of ancient Earth systems and more modern innovations developed in isolation by the underground Earth Defense Force. Admiral on deck, announced the officer in charge as Kian entered. The personnel, mostly young men and women who had likely been born and raised in the hidden complex, snapped to attention. At ease, Kian said, momentarily disoriented by the display of military discipline. After years in the loosely structured alliance forces, the traditional Earth military protocols felt almost alien. Status report? The 7th Fleet has deployed into a defensive formation around Earth, Admiral, reported a young lieutenant. Fighter squadrons are prepped and ready for launch, awaiting final coordination assignments. Kian studied the tactical display. The 7th Fleet had arranged itself in a multi-layered defense, with heavy capital ships forming the outer perimeter, and faster, more maneuverable vessels positioned to respond to breakthroughs. "Have the Zirk detected our forces yet?" he asked. "Negative, sir. Our stealth systems are still operational. The Zirk fleet is proceeding on its original course, apparently unaware of what awaits them." "And the Alliance?" "The Hyperion has established orbit and begun deploying evacuation shuttles. Sir, they're hailing us. They've detected power signatures from the command complex." Kyan had expected this. "Put them through." The stern face of Commander Talos appeared on the main screen. His expression was a mixture of surprise and suspicion. "Admiral Arlen," he said coldly, "I see you've found accommodations more suitable than those provided by the Alliance." "Commander Talos," Kyan replied evenly, "I apologize for the deception, but I had orders that predated our current mission." "Orders?" Talos's eyes narrowed. "From whom?" "From me." General Zhang stepped into view beside Kyan. "General Li Zhang, Earth Defense Force Supreme Commander." Talos paled visibly. "General Zhang is dead. This is some kind of trick." "I assure you, Commander, I am very much alive," Zhang replied, "as is Earth's defense capability. I suggest you recall your evacuation teams immediately. They're about to find themselves in a war zone." "What are you talking about?" Talos demanded. "The Zirk fleet is still hours away from weapons range." "We're not waiting for them to get that close," Kyan explained. "Earth Defense Force vessels will be engaging the Zirk fleet within the next 30 minutes. "Earth has no defense force," Talos exploded. "This is madness. Whatever outdated weapons you may have found in that facility, they're no match for a modern Zirk battle fleet." Zhang smiled thinly. "You might want to check your long-range sensors, Commander. You'll find that reports of Earth's military demise have been greatly exaggerated." On cue, the 7th Fleet deactivated its stealth systems, becoming visible to both Alliance and Zirk sensors. The reaction on the Hyperion's bridge was visible even through the communication screen, officers rushing to confirm readings. Alarms sounding as threat assessment systems registered the massive force that had appeared seemingly from nowhere. This is impossible," Talos stammered. "The treaty explicitly required Earth to dismantle all military vessels above cruiser class." "The treaty was with the civilian government that left Earth," Zhang corrected him. "Those of us who remained never signed anything. Now, I strongly advise you to withdraw to a safe distance. Commander, we cannot guarantee your safety once the battle begins." Talos's shock was giving way to anger. "The Alliance will not stand for this deception. Earth is a protectorate, not an independent military power." "That status may be up for renegotiation after today," Kyan suggested mildly. "But first, we have a more pressing concern. The Zirk fleet has changed course. They've detected our forces and are moving to engage." Indeed, the red markers representing the Zirk vessels had altered their formation, accelerating toward Earth in what was clearly an attack pattern. "We're out of time," Zhang said. "Commander Talos, this is your final warning. Withdraw your vessel or declare your intentions. Are you with us or against us?" Talos hesitated, visibly calculating the political implications of every possible response. Finally, he said, "The Hyperion will take up a position of neutrality and observation. We will neither assist nor hinder your defense operations. But be warned, General, the Alliance Council will have much to say about this development." "I look forward to the conversation," Zhang replied dryly. "Arlen out." The communication ended, and Kyan turned to Zhang. "He'll report everything to the Alliance Council. They'll send reinforcements, which won't arrive in time to affect the outcome of this battle," Zhang pointed out. "By then, either Earth will have demonstrated its ability to defend itself, or we'll all be dead. Either way, it won't be our problem." Kyan couldn't argue with that logic. What are your orders, General? Coordinate the fighter response. The Zirk are known for deploying swarm tactics with their smaller vessels. Our capital ships can handle their heavy cruisers, but we'll need precision and coordination to counter the swarms. Understood. Kian turned to the tactical station. Patch me through to all fighter squadron leaders. As the communications officer worked to establish the link, Kian studied the tactical display with a professional eye. The Zirk fleet was impressive, nearly 400 vessels of various classes, from massive dreadnoughts to nimble attack craft. But the 7th Fleet, combined with Earth's defense platforms, held the advantage of position and surprise. All squadron leaders standing by. Admiral, the communications officer reported. Kian took a deep breath. It had been years since he had commanded fighters in combat, but the old instincts returned as if no time had passed. Squadron leaders, this is Admiral Arlen. In approximately 20 minutes, we will engage the largest hostile fleet to enter the Sol system in over 2 centuries. Your primary objectives are to protect Earth's orbital defense platforms and to prevent any Zirk vessels from establishing a landing zone. The capital ships will handle their heavy cruisers. Your targets are their fighter screens and troop transports. He paused, considering his next words carefully. These pilots had trained their entire lives for a battle they never truly expected to fight. They needed more than just tactical instructions. I know many of you have never seen actual combat, he continued, but you are the inheritors of Earth's proudest military tradition. For generations, your ancestors have prepared in secret, maintaining the legacy of a world that the rest of the galaxy thought had faded into insignificance. Today, you will remind them that Earth is not just humanity's birthplace. It is our stronghold, our home, and we will defend it with every resource at our command. The response was immediate, a chorus of affirmations from squadron leaders who, despite their lack of combat experience, displayed the confidence that came from years of rigorous training. Fighter groups Alpha through Delta moved to intercept their advanced squadrons. Kian ordered. Groups Echo and Foxtrot maintain position around the defense platforms. All remaining squadrons form a reserve force and prepare to respond to breakthrough attempts. As the fighter squadrons deployed according to his instructions, Kian felt a tap on his shoulder. General Zhang had been joined by Commander Vallis and Dr. Alara. Admiral, Dr. Morn has made a discovery that may alter our tactical approach, Zhang said. Alara stepped forward, her expression grave. I've been analyzing the Zirk fleet composition based on our sensor readings. They're not just bringing warships. Nearly a third of their vessels are terraforming platforms. Terraforming? Kian frowned. Why would they need to terraform Earth? It's already perfectly habitable for most species. Not terraforming in the traditional sense, Alara clarified. These platforms are designed to radically alter a planet's biosphere, specifically to make it inhospitable to certain species while optimizing it for others. The implications were clear. They're not just planning to conquer Earth, Kian said slowly. They want to erase any trace that humans ever lived here. Precisely, Alara confirmed. Based on the equipment they're bringing, they intend to release engineered microorganisms that would break down anything of human origin, from our cities to our very DNA. They want to cleanse the planet of our existence. Then we have even more reason to stop them, Zhang said grimly. Commander Vallis, adjust the target priorities. Those terraforming platforms are now primary objectives. Yes, General, Vallis acknowledged, moving to relay the orders. How much time do we have? Kian asked Alara. The Zirk fleet will enter weapons range in 15 minutes, she reported. If they manage to deploy even one of those platforms into the atmosphere, they won't, Kian assured her. We'll stop them here, in space, before they get anywhere near Earth's surface. Alara didn't look convinced. Admiral, there's something else. The signal that triggered the sleeping giant protocol. I've managed to trace its origin. It didn't come from a Zirk vessel as we initially thought. It came from within their territory. Yes, but from what appears to be an old Earth outpost. What kind of outpost? Zhang asked sharply. Based on the fragmentary data I've recovered, it was a research facility, established during the height of Earth's expansion, before the Proxima Centauri conflict. The records are incomplete, but it seems they were working on something called Project Lazarus. Zhang and Qian exchanged a look. I've never heard of it, Qian admitted. Nor I, Zhang said, which suggests it was classified beyond even my clearance level. Doctor, continue your research. If this Project Lazarus is somehow connected to the Zirk attack, we need to understand. How? Yes, General, Ilara replied, though she seemed reluctant to leave as the battle approached. Go, Qian told her gently. You'll do more good unlocking those secrets than watching a space battle. After Ilara departed, Qian returned his attention to the tactical display. The Zirk fleet had adopted a wedge formation, clearly intending to punch through the Earth's defenses at a single point, rather than engaging across a broad front. They're being cautious, Zhang observed. They've detected our fleet, but can't be certain of our capabilities. This initial approach is designed to test our defenses. Then let's give them a proper welcome, Qian replied, keying the communications system again. All defense platforms, this is Admiral Arlen. The enemy has adopted a concentrated approach vector. Platforms in sectors 7 through 12. Prepare for first contact. All other platforms. Maintain alert status, but hold fire unless directly engaged. The minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. On the tactical display, the red wedge of the Zirk fleet drew inexorably closer to the blue line representing Earth's forward defenses. Enemy vessels entering weapons range in 30 seconds, reported a sensor officer. All units, weapons free. Qian ordered. Engage at will. The space between the fleets lit up as Earth's defense platforms opened fire, their energy weapons creating a deadly lattice of destructive force. The leading edge of the Zirk formation took heavy damage, several smaller vessels disappearing from the tactical display as they were destroyed outright. But the Zirk responded with brutal efficiency, their return fire focusing on the defense platforms that had revealed themselves. 3 platforms winked out in rapid succession, overwhelmed by the concentrated firepower. They're adapting quickly, Zhang noted, adjusting their formation to minimize exposure while maximizing their offensive output. 7th Fleet is engaging, the communications officer reported. Admiral Chung reports that the enemy's capital ships are heavily shielded, but vulnerable to coordinated strikes. The battle escalated rapidly as the 7th Fleet moved to engage the Zirk directly. Earth's capital ships, massive vessels that dwarfed even the Hyperion, unleashed weaponry that had been theoretical when Qian was last in active service. Quantum disruptors, gravitational lenses that focused energy to devastating effect, and swarms of autonomous combat drones that overwhelmed enemy point defenses. The Zirk fought back with equal ferocity, their ships displaying a level of coordination that suggested either extensive training or some form of shared consciousness. They targeted Earth vessels with precision, focusing fire to break through shields and armor in sequence. Fighter Group Delta reports heavy casualties, came an urgent communication. Requesting reinforcements. Divert Group Echo to support, Qian ordered, and have our capital ships adjust formation to provide covering fire for the fighters. The battle continued to evolve, with both sides adapting to the other's tactics in real time. The Zirk abandoned their wedge formation, splitting into smaller battle groups that sought to exploit gaps in Earth's defenses. The 7th Fleet responded by creating a mobile defense, using its superior numbers to contain and isolate the Zirk groups. "Admiral," Zhang said quietly, stepping close to Qian, "we're holding our own. But this is just their first wave. Long-range sensors show a second Zirk fleet approaching from the outer system." Qian's heart sank. How many? At least as many as the first, possibly more. "Can we hold against that kind of force?" Zhang's expression was grim. "Not indefinitely. We need to end this first engagement decisively before the second wave arrives." Qian studied the tactical display, looking for a weakness in the Zirk formation. "There," he said, pointing to a cluster of larger vessels near the center of their formation. "Those must be the terraforming platforms. They're keeping them protected behind their heaviest warships. If we could eliminate those platforms, it might force them to reconsider their strategy." Zhang agreed, but breaking through to them would require a concentrated assault that would leave other areas vulnerable. Unless, Qian had a sudden insight. The defense platforms in the asteroid belt, they're not just defensive weapons. According to the Sleeping Giant protocol data, they can reconfigure into offensive mode. Zhang caught on immediately. "A pincer movement. Use the platforms to attack from the rear, while our fleet engages from the front." Exactly. The Zirk won't be expecting an attack from that direction. "It's risky," Zhang cautioned. "Once those platforms reveal themselves, they'll be vulnerable. We'd need precise timing to ensure they cause maximum damage before the Zirk can respond." "It's a risk we have to take," Qian insisted. "Otherwise, we'll be fighting a war of attrition that we can't win." Zhang considered for a moment, then nodded. "Do it." Qian issued the orders, coordinating with both the defense platform controllers and the 7th Fleet. The plan required exact timing. The fleet would intensify its frontal assault at the same moment the asteroid belt platforms launched their attack from behind, catching the Zirk in a deadly crossfire. "All units in position," reported the communications officer. "Awaiting your command, Admiral." Qian took a deep breath. "Execute." The battle exploded into new intensity as the 7th Fleet surged forward, all weapons firing at maximum capacity. The Zirk responded as expected, reinforcing their forward defenses to meet the assault. And then, from behind them, the asteroid belt erupted with weapons fire. Defense platforms that had remained dormant now activated, unleashing a barrage of energy weapons and missiles directly into the unprotected rear of the Zirk formation. The effect was devastating. Caught between two forces, the Zirk ships attempted to reorient their defenses, but in doing so, created gaps that Earth's fighters exploited mercilessly. Ship after ship fell to the coordinated attack, including several of the precious terraforming platforms. "It's working!" exclaimed a tactical officer. "The Zirk formation is breaking apart." But victory was far from assured. The Zirk commander, recognizing the threat from the asteroid belt, diverted a significant portion of their fleet to neutralize the platforms. The platforms, designed primarily for defense rather than sustained offensive operations, began to fall one by one. "We need to press the advantage while we have it," Qian urged. "All fighter squadrons, concentrate on the terraforming platforms. Capital ships, maintain pressure on their forward elements." The battle devolved into a chaotic melee, with ships engaging at point-blank range in some sectors, while long-range artillery duels continued in others. Earth's forces had the advantage of numbers and position, but the Zirk fought with the desperation of those who knew retreat was not an option. Amidst the chaos, a priority communication came through from Dr. Elara Morn. "Admiral," her voice was urgent. "I've decrypted more of the data from the signal that triggered the Sleeping Giant protocol. Project Lazarus wasn't a weapon or a defense system. It was a diplomatic mission. Earth sent envoys to the Zirk over a century ago, seeking to establish relations before the Exodus. And, Kian prompted, dividing his attention between her report and the ongoing battle. The mission failed catastrophically. Something went wrong. The records aren't clear, but it resulted in the death of a Zirk religious leader. In their culture, such an act demands retribution, not just against the individuals responsible, but against their entire lineage. They're here for revenge, Kian realized, after all this time. Yes, but there's more. The signal that activated the Sleeping Giant protocol was a warning from the last surviving member of the Lazarus team. They've been hiding within Zirk territory for decades, monitoring their plans. The message contained tactical data on Zirk fleet formations and weapon systems, data we can use. Send it to the tactical team immediately, Kian ordered. And Doctor, find out if that survivor is still alive. They might be our best hope for resolving this conflict without total destruction on both sides. The tactical data proved invaluable. Earth's forces quickly identified vulnerabilities in Zirk shield configurations and weapon cooling systems, adjusting their attacks to exploit these weaknesses. The tide of battle shifted decisively in Earth's favor, with Zirk vessels falling at an accelerating rate. The enemy is beginning to withdraw, reported the sensor officer. Their formation is collapsing. Don't let them regroup, Kian commanded. Pursue and eliminate the terraforming platforms at all costs. Let their warships escape if necessary. The Earth fighters fell upon the retreating Zirk vessels like wolves, targeting engines and navigation systems to prevent escape. The terraforming platforms, lacking the speed and maneuverability of dedicated warships, were easy prey once their protective screen was broken. Within an hour, the first wave of the Zirk fleet had been decisively defeated. Of nearly 400 vessels, fewer than 100 managed to retreat, and not a single terraforming platform survived. But the cost had been high. Earth had lost over 30 defense platforms and nearly 100 ships, with many more damaged. And the second Zirk fleet was still approaching, though it had slowed its advance upon witnessing the fate of the first wave. They're reassessing, Zhang observed, studying the long-range sensor data, trying to determine if they have the strength to succeed where the first fleet failed. Or waiting for reinforcements, Kian suggested grimly. We hurt them badly, but this isn't over. A new communication alert sounded, this time from the Hyperion. Patch it through, Zhang ordered. Commander Talos appeared on screen, his expression a mixture of awe and calculation. General Zhang, Admiral Arlen, the Alliance Council has reviewed my initial report on the situation here. They're concerned about the re-emergence of Earth as a military power. Their concern is noted, Zhang replied dryly. Is there something specific you wish to discuss, Commander? We're rather busy at the moment. The Council has authorized me to offer Alliance support against the second Zirk fleet, Talos said. A task force is already en route, but won't arrive for at least 24 hours. In the meantime, the Hyperion is at your disposal. Kian and Zhang exchanged skeptical glances. That's a rather sudden change of heart, Commander, Kian observed. The Alliance has always been committed to protecting its member worlds. Talos replied smoothly. Earth may have surprised us with its hidden capabilities, but you are still under Alliance protection. How generous, Zhang said. And in return for this assistance, what does the Alliance expect? Talos hesitated. The Council would appreciate a full briefing on Earth's military assets and capabilities once the current crisis is resolved. I'm sure they would, Zhang replied. We'll consider your offer. Commander, in the meantime, the Hyperion should maintain its current position. We wouldn't want to risk your valuable vessel in what promises to be an even more intense engagement than the first. After ending the communication, Zhang turned to Kian. The Alliance smells blood in the water. They're not offering help out of altruism. Of course not, Kian agreed. They want to assess our strengths and weaknesses firsthand. The question is, can we afford to refuse their help? Before Zhang could respond, Dr. Alara burst into the command center, her expression triumphant. We found him. The survivor from Project Lazarus. He's still alive, and he's on his way to Earth. What? Kian and Zhang spoke in unison. His name is Thaddeus Reeve, Alara explained breathlessly. He was the cultural liaison for the Lazarus mission. When everything went wrong, he managed to go into hiding within Zirk territory. He's been living under an assumed identity for decades, gathering intelligence and waiting for the right moment to warn Earth. And that moment came when the Zirk finally decided to attack, Kian surmised. Exactly. He triggered the sleeping giant protocol remotely, then commandeered a small vessel to make his way here. His ship is being escorted in by Group Foxtrot as we speak. This could change everything, Zhang said thoughtfully. If he's been living among the Zirk all this time, he'll understand their culture, their weaknesses, perhaps even how to negotiate with them. Assuming they're willing to negotiate, Kian cautioned. They've committed significant resources to this attack. They may not be willing to simply walk away, especially after suffering such losses. Then we need to give them a reason, Zhang decided. Something that outweighs their desire for vengeance. He turned to a communications officer. Prepare a message for transmission to the 2nd Zirk Fleet. I want to speak directly with their commander. While they waited for Reeve's arrival, Earth's forces regrouped and repaired what damage they could. The 7th Fleet repositioned itself to meet the 2nd Zirk attack, incorporating lessons learned from the first engagement. Defense platforms that had survived adjusted their shield frequencies and weapon configurations based on observed Zirk vulnerabilities. Thaddeus Reeve arrived 2 hours later, a gaunt, weathered man whose features bore the distinctive modification surgery common among those who infiltrated alien societies. Despite appearing partially Zirk, his movements and speech were unmistakably human. General Zhang, he greeted with a formal bow. Admiral Arlen, I've waited a long time for this day. Mr. Reeve, Zhang responded, your warning saved countless lives. Earth owes you a debt of gratitude. I merely fulfilled my duty, Reeve said dismissively, though I confess, I never expected to find Earth's defenses so robust. The sleeping giant protocol was theoretical when I left on the Lazarus mission. Much has changed, Kian told him, but not the Zirk, apparently. They've held a grudge for over a century. The Zirk do not forget, and they do not forgive, Reeve confirmed. In their culture, a blood debt must be paid in full. The death of High Cleric Zorak, an accident, I assure you, created a stain that could only be cleansed by the complete eradication of humanity. High Cleric Zorak? Kian repeated. Any relation to the current Zirk Emperor? His father, Reeve explained. The current Emperor was merely a prince when the incident occurred. He has built his entire reign on the promise to avenge his father's death. It's become more than a matter of honor. It's the foundation of his political power. So he can't back down without risking his throne, Zhang concluded. That complicates matters. But it also gives us leverage, Reeve suggested. Emperor Zorak cannot be seen to fail. But if the cost of success becomes too high, he might accept an alternative that allows him to save face. Kian finished the thought. What did you have in mind? Reeve outlined a plan that was audacious in its simplicity. Using his knowledge of Zirk culture and politics, they would offer Emperor Zorak a way to claim victory without actually destroying Earth, a symbolic cleansing rather than a literal one, combined with reparations and a formal acknowledgement of wrongdoing by Earth's government. Will it work? Zhang asked when Reeve had finished explaining. It might, Reeve replied honestly. The Zirk value symbols and rituals almost as much as they value vengeance. If we can satisfy their need for justice in a ceremonial way, it could be enough, especially if the alternative is another devastating military defeat. And if it doesn't work, Kian pressed, then we'll be no worse off than we are now, Reeve said simply. The Second Fleet will attack, and Earth will defend itself. Zhang made his decision. Prepare the transmission as Mr. Reeve suggested. Let's see if Emperor Zorak is willing to listen to reason. The message was crafted carefully, with Reeve providing guidance on the precise wording and ceremonial phrases that would resonate with Zirka cultural expectations. It acknowledged the wrong done to High Cleric Zorak, offered formal reparations according to Zirk tradition, and proposed a ritual cleansing ceremony to be conducted by Zirk priests on Earth soil, a symbolic victory that Emperor Zorak could present to his people. The response came faster than anyone had anticipated. Emperor Zorak himself appeared on the communication screen, his alien features arranged in what Reeve identified as an expression of cautious interest. General Zhang of Earth, the Emperor spoke through a translation system. Your proposal is unexpected. The blood debt of my father demands satisfaction. And it shall have it. Emperor Zorak, Zhang replied, following the ceremonial phrases Reeve had prepared. Earth acknowledges its debt and offers payment in the tradition of your people. Let the stain be cleansed through ritual rather than through destruction. Both fulfill the demands of honor, but only one preserves the future. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. You have suffered losses in the first battle, he finally said. But so have we. If this continues, more will die on both sides. Yet the debt must be paid. The debt will be paid, Zhang assured him. In full, according to your customs. This I swear as the commander of Earth's forces. Another long silence. Then, I will consider your proposal. The Second Fleet will hold position until I have decided. But be warned, if your offer is merely a delaying tactic, the vengeance of the Zirk will be even greater. We understand, Zhang said. We await your decision, Emperor Zorak. After the communication ended, the command center erupted in relieved murmurs. The immediate threat had been postponed, if not eliminated entirely. But Kian wasn't ready to celebrate just yet. He's playing for time, he said quietly to Zhang and Reeve. Assessing our strength, perhaps waiting for reinforcements. Possibly, Reeve acknowledged, but the fact that he responded at all is significant. The Zirk rarely negotiate once blood vengeance has been declared. So we have a chance, Zhang said, but we should prepare for the worst regardless. If negotiations fail, we need to be ready for the Second Fleet. Kian nodded. I'll coordinate with Admiral Chung to reposition our forces. Dr. Morn, continue working with Mr. Reeve to refine our diplomatic approach. Commander Vallis, I want a full assessment of our combat readiness within the hour. As the others dispersed to their tasks, Zhang placed a hand on Kian's shoulder. You've slipped back into command, as if you never left. Old friend. Some things you never forget, Kian replied with a tired smile. Though I'd hoped my fighting days were behind me. As did I, Zhang admitted. But perhaps this was inevitable. Earth couldn't remain forgotten forever. What happens after this? Li, Kian asked, using the general's first name for the first time since their reunion. If we survive the Zirk, the Alliance won't simply ignore Earth's resurgence. One battle at a time, Zhang counseled, but between us, I think humanity's days of hiding in the shadows are over. For better or worse, Earth has announced its return to the galactic stage. Over the next 12 hours, a tense waiting game ensued. The Zirk's Second Fleet maintained its position, neither advancing nor retreating. The Alliance, represented by the Hyperion, continued to offer assistance while clearly gathering intelligence on Earth's capabilities. And Earth's forces used the respite to repair damage, reorganize, and prepare for either outcome, peace or war. Kian found Dr. Alara in one of the command center's smaller research labs, working alongside Reeve to analyze Zirk cultural texts. "Any progress?" he asked, offering her a cup of synthetic coffee. She accepted it gratefully. "Some. Thaddeus has been helping me understand the nuances of Zirk ritual cleansing ceremonies. They're incredibly complex, with specific requirements for participants, location, and timing. If Emperor Zorak accepts our proposal, we'll need to get every detail right." Reeve added, "The slightest mistake could be interpreted as an insult, or worse, deliberate sacrilege." "Do you think he'll accept?" Kian asked directly. Reeve hesitated. "I've spent decades among the Zirk, Admiral, and I still can't predict them with certainty. But Emperor Zorak is pragmatic, despite his devotion to tradition. He must recognize that continuing this conflict could cost him more than he's willing to sacrifice." "Let's hope you're right," Kian said, "because the alternative—" He was interrupted by an urgent communication. "Admiral Arlen to the command center immediately. Repeat. Admiral Arlen to the command center." When Kian arrived, with Alara and Reeve close behind, he found General Zhang engaged in another communication with Emperor Zorak. The Emperor's expression was unreadable to human eyes, but Reeve tensed visibly. "On will accept your proposal under specific conditions." Zorak was saying, "The cleansing ritual must be conducted at the site where the decision to send the Lazarus mission was made. The highest authority of Earth must participate and personally acknowledge the blood debt. And Thaddeus Reeve must surrender himself to Zirk justice for his role in my father's death." Zhang's expression remained impassive, but Kian could see the tension in his posture. "The first two conditions are acceptable, Emperor Zorak. But Mr. Reeve has served Earth faithfully for over a century. We cannot surrender him to uncertain fate. There can be no cleansing without justice for all who were involved," Zorak insisted. "This is not negotiable." Reeve stepped forward. "General, I volunteer to meet the Emperor's terms." "Thaddeus, no," Alara protested. "You know what they'll do to you." "I've always known this day might come," Reeve replied calmly. "My mission was to warn Earth and help prevent destruction. If my surrender completes that mission, then so be it." Zorak's attention focused on Reeve. "Thaddeus Reeve, you have lived among us for many cycles, hidden behind the face of a Zirk. Such deception carries its own penalty, separate from the blood debt." "I am aware, Emperor," Reeve responded in the formal Zirk language. "I accept the consequences of my actions." Zhang looked to Kian, a silent question in his eyes. Kian gave a slight shake of his head. They couldn't sacrifice Reeve, not when he was their only true expert on Zirk culture and politics. "Emperor Zorak," Zhang said carefully, "perhaps there is a compromise that would satisfy justice without requiring Mr. Reeve's surrender. In Earth traditions, a champion may stand in place of another when honor is at stake. Would the Zirk consider such a substitution?" Zorak appeared surprised by the suggestion. "A champion? This is not a common practice among our people, but it is not without precedent in our ancient texts." He seemed to consider the idea. "Who would stand as champion for this deceiver?" Before Zhang could respond, Kian stepped forward. "I would. Emperor, Admiral Kian Arlen of the Earth Defense Force. I offer myself as champion for Thaddeus Reeve." "Admiral, what are you doing?" Alara whispered urgently. "Trust me," Kian replied under his breath. Zorak studied Kian through the viewscreen. "You would face Zirk justice in his place, knowing that the penalty may be severe?" "I would," Kian confirmed, "with one condition of my own, that the nature of this justice be specified before I surrender myself. Earth will not agree to undefined terms." The Emperor conferred briefly with advisors off-screen. When he returned his attention to the conversation, he said, "The traditional penalty for Reeve's crimes would be ritual combat against a champion of the wronged family. In this case, my own champion. Victory would constitute justice served. Defeat would mean death." "Combat," Kian repeated, "not execution." "Not immediately," Zorak clarified, "though few non-Zirk have ever survived such encounters. It was a gamble, but one that offered better odds than simple surrender." Kian had been a skilled fighter in his prime, and while age had slowed him somewhat, he had kept himself in reasonable condition during retirement. "I accept these terms," Kian declared. "Ritual combat against your champion, with the understanding that victory means Thaddeus Reeve is absolved of all crimes against the Zirk." "Agreed," Zorak said after another brief consultation. "The cleansing ceremony will take place in 3 planetary rotations at the location specified. The combat trial will follow immediately after. Until then, the Second Fleet will maintain its current position as a gesture of good faith." The communication ended, and Zhang turned to Kian with a mixture of admiration and exasperation. That was either very brave or very foolish. "Old friend." "Probably both," Kian admitted. "But it gives us time, and it keeps Reeve alive and free to continue helping us navigate Zirk customs." "The Emperor's champion will be a formidable opponent," Reeve warned. "Ritual combat in Zirk culture is not merely a physical contest. It involves elements of their unique biology that give them significant advantages." "Then you'd better start teaching me everything I need to know," Kian replied grimly, "because I have no intention of dying on Earth after traveling all this way to save it." The next 3 days passed in a flurry of activity. While Earth's forces continued to repair and regroup, diplomatic preparations advanced for the cleansing ceremony. The location Zorak had specified, the site where the decision to send the Lazarus mission was made, was identified as the old Earth Council chambers in what had once been Geneva, now largely reclaimed by nature, but still recognizable. Meanwhile, Reeve and Commander Darvok worked intensively with Kian, training him in the specific techniques and protocols of Zirk ritual combat. It was grueling preparation, made more challenging by Kian's age and the physical differences between humans and Zirk. "Their center of gravity is lower," Darvok explained, demonstrating a defensive stance. "And they have secondary limbs here and here that can deploy during combat. You'll need to stay mobile and avoid close engagement." "Their vision is different too," Reeve added. "They perceive motion more acutely than static objects. Slow, deliberate movements followed by explosive action can confuse their tracking." Kian absorbed these lessons with the focus and determination that had characterized his military career. He had no illusions about the challenge ahead. The Emperor's champion would be younger, stronger, and fighting with biological advantages Kian couldn't match. His only hope lay in understanding Zirk weaknesses and exploiting them through strategy rather than raw power. On the morning of the 3rd day, a small delegation prepared to travel to the ceremony site. General Zhang would represent Earth's military leadership, with Alara Morn providing scientific and cultural expertise. Roan Darvok would accompany them as security, though weapons would be strictly limited, according to the ceremonial requirements. And Kian, of course, would attend as both participant in the ceremony and combatant in the trial to follow. As they boarded a shuttle for the journey to the surface, Commander Talos made an unexpected appearance. "The Alliance wishes to observe these proceedings," he announced. "As Earth's protective authority, we have a vested interest in any agreement made with the Zirk." Zhang's expression hardened. "This is an Earth matter, Commander. The Alliance's protective authority seems remarkably fluid depending on circumstances." "Nevertheless," Talos insisted, "the Council has instructed me to attend as an observer, unless you wish to formally reject Alliance oversight. That would have implications for Earth's status moving forward." It was a thinly veiled threat, but one with teeth. Despite Earth's demonstrated military capability, open defiance of the Alliance could lead to diplomatic isolation or worse. "Very well," Zhang conceded reluctantly. "You may attend as an observer only. Any interference in the proceedings could jeopardize the entire agreement." Talos inclined his head in acknowledgement. "Understood. General." As they descended toward Earth's surface, Kian gazed out at the landscape below. The planet had changed dramatically since his last visit decades earlier. Cities had crumbled, forests had expanded, and rivers had changed course. Yet it was still unmistakably Earth, still home, despite everything. They landed near the remains of Geneva, where a Zirk delegation was already waiting. Emperor Zorak had sent his High Consul rather than attending personally. A slight, but not unexpected diplomatic maneuver. The High Consul was accompanied by several priests in ceremonial regalia and a towering figure who could only be the Emperor's champion, a Zirk warrior nearly 2 meters tall, with the distinctive scarification that marked elite members of their military caste. The ceremony itself was elaborate and lengthy, involving ritual invocations, the burning of sacred materials, and formal exchanges between Zhang and the High Consul. Thaddeus Reeve had prepared Zhang thoroughly, and the general performed his role with perfect precision, neither rushing nor hesitating as he acknowledged Earth's responsibility for the death of High Cleric Zorak and offered the ceremonial reparations. Throughout the proceedings, Kian observed the Emperor's champion, studying his movements and bearing. The warrior remained impassive, showing no sign of aggression or impatience. His discipline was impressive and concerning. This would not be an opponent easily provoked into mistakes. When the cleansing ritual was complete, the High Consul announced the commencement of the combat trial. A circle was marked on the ground, according to Zirk tradition, large enough to allow movement, but small enough to ensure the combat would reach a conclusion rather than devolving into a chase. "The trial by combat will now begin," the High Consul declared. "Admiral Kian Arlen of Earth stands as champion for Thaddeus Reeve. War Master Krell Zak stands as champion for the Emperor and the memory of High Cleric Zorak. The combat will continue until one participant surrenders or is unable to continue. There will be no interference from observers. Are the champions prepared?" Kian stepped forward, dressed in a simple tunic and trousers that allowed freedom of movement. "I am ready." The Zirk warrior, Krelzak, entered the circle from the opposite side. "I stand ready to bring justice." "Then let the trial begin," the High Consul intoned, stepping back from the circle. For a moment, both combatants stood motionless, assessing each other. Then Krelzak moved with surprising speed for his size, closing the distance between them with powerful strides. Kian remembered Reeve's advice about Zirk vision and remained perfectly still until the last possible moment. Then exploded into motion, sidestepping the initial rush and striking at the warrior's exposed flank as he passed. The blow landed solidly, but Krelzak showed no sign of pain. Instead, he pivoted with fluid grace and unleashed a series of strikes that forced Kian into a defensive retreat. The Zirk's secondary limbs, additional appendages normally folded against his torso, deployed suddenly, nearly catching Kian by surprise. The combat continued in this fashion for several minutes, with Krelzak pressing the attack and Kian evading, countering when possible, but mainly focused on survival. The Zirk's superior strength and reach gave him a significant advantage, and Kian could feel himself tiring while his opponent seemed fresh. "You fight well for an elder," Krelzak commented during a brief pause in the engagement. "But you cannot win this contest. Surrender with honor, and your death will be swift." "I appreciate the offer," Kian replied, using the moment to catch his breath. "But I've never been good at surrendering." He studied the Zirk warrior more carefully now, looking for any sign of weakness or vulnerability. Reeve had mentioned that the secondary limbs, while powerful, required significant energy to maintain deployment. If Kian could force Krelzak to keep them active long enough, he changed tactics, initiating attacks instead of merely responding, forcing the Zirk to defend with all his limbs. The risk was substantial, exposing himself to counterattacks that could end the fight instantly, but it was his only path to victory. Krelzak seemed surprised by the change in approach, but adapted quickly, using his secondary limbs to block while striking with his primary arms. The pattern continued, with Kian taking glancing blows, but maintaining his aggressive posture, constantly moving to force the Zirk to reposition. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Kian's muscles burned with fatigue, and he had sustained several minor injuries. But he could see signs that his strategy was working. Krelzak's movements were becoming less fluid, his secondary limbs slower to respond. Finally, after a particularly intense exchange, Kian saw his opportunity. The Zirk warrior overextended slightly, his balance compromised by fatigue. In that instant, Kian executed a sweeping kick at the exact point Reeve had identified as a vulnerability in Zirk physiology, the joint where their primary and secondary leg structures connected. Krelzak stumbled, his secondary limbs retracting involuntarily as his body redirected energy to maintain balance. Before he could recover, Kian closed the distance and applied precise pressure to the nerve clusters at the base of the Zirk's neck, another weakness Reeve had identified, though he had warned it was difficult to target effectively. The effect was immediate. Krelzak froze, his muscles locking as the neural overload disrupted his motor control. It wouldn't last long, but it didn't need to. In Zirk ritual combat, rendering an opponent temporarily incapacitated was considered a decisive victory, equivalent to a killing blow in actual warfare. "The trial is concluded," the High Consul announced, his voice betraying surprise. "Admiral Kian Arlen is victorious. According to the terms agreed upon, Thaddeus Reeve is absolved of all crimes against the Zirk people." Kian stepped back, offering a formal bow to his opponent, as Krelzak regained control of his body. The Zirk warrior returned the gesture with visible reluctance, but no protest. Honor had been satisfied according to their traditions. The High Consul approached General Zhang. "The blood debt is paid. The cleansing is complete. Emperor Zorak recognizes this matter as resolved. Earth acknowledges the resolution and thanks the Emperor for his wisdom," Zhang replied, using the formal phrases Reeve had prepared. As the Zirk delegation departed, Kian felt the tension drain from his body, replaced by exhaustion. Ilara was at his side immediately, examining his injuries with concern. "Nothing serious," he assured her, though every muscle protested the statement. "Though I may regret this tomorrow." "That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever seen," she said, echoing Zhang's earlier assessment. "But it worked. The Zirk will withdraw their fleet." "For now," Kian cautioned. We've resolved this specific grievance, but the relationship between Earth and the Zirk Empire remains complicated at best. Commander Talos approached, his expression carefully neutral. An impressive display. Admiral, the Alliance Council will be interested to hear about these developments. I'm sure they will, Kyan replied dryly, though I suspect their interest has less to do with diplomatic relations and more to do with Earth's unexpected resurrection as a military power. Talos didn't deny it. The galaxy has maintained a delicate balance for centuries. Earth's revelations have the potential to disrupt that balance significantly. Perhaps it's time for a new balance, Zhang suggested, joining the conversation. One that recognizes humanity's rightful place as equals, not subordinates. That would require renegotiation of the Alliance Treaty. Talos pointed out, a complex process. Then we should begin soon. Zhang replied, the sleeping giant is awake. Commander, there's no putting it back to sleep. The return journey to the command complex was quiet. Each member of the Earth delegation lost in their own thoughts about the implications of the day's events. The immediate crisis had been resolved, but it was merely the first of many challenges that would follow Earth's re-emergence on the galactic stage. In orbit, the Zirk Second Fleet had already begun its withdrawal, honoring the agreement reached through the cleansing ceremony and combat trial. The Seventh Fleet maintained its defensive posture, watching carefully to ensure the Zirk departure was genuine and complete. Back at the command complex, Kyan found himself drawn to the observation deck, gazing up at the stars as he had so often on Ceti Alpha 7. But the perspective was different now. These were Earth stars, viewed from humanity's home. Penny for your thoughts, Ilara's voice came from behind him. Kyan smiled without turning. I'm not sure they're worth even that much. Just an old soldier wondering what comes next. She moved to stand beside him. Earth has announced its return rather dramatically. The galaxy will have to adjust to our presence again. And we'll have to adjust to a new role. Kyan added, not conquerors, not refugees, but something in between. Finding that balance won't be easy. No, she agreed, but necessary, and perhaps overdue. They stood in companionable silence for a time, until a communication alert interrupted the moment. General Zhang's voice came over the intercom. Admiral Arlen, Dr. Morn, your presence is requested in the strategic planning room. We're receiving reports of unusual activity in the Proxima Centauri system. Kyan sighed. It seems the universe isn't giving us much time to catch our breath. Would you have it any other way? Ilara asked with a knowing smile. He considered the question seriously. After years of quiet retirement, he had been thrust back into the heart of events that would shape humanity's future. It was exhausting, dangerous, and vitally important work. No, he admitted finally. I wouldn't. As they made their way to the strategic planning room, the command complex hummed with renewed purpose. The sleeping giant was fully awake now, stretching muscles long dormant, but still powerful. Earth had reclaimed its voice in galactic affairs, and while the road ahead would be challenging, Kyan found himself looking forward to the journey. In the distance, barely audible beneath the efficient bustle of a military installation at full readiness, came the rhythmic sound of drums, a training exercise, perhaps, or a ceremonial salute to their recent victory. They thought the sleeping giant was dead, Kyan reflected, until they heard the drums of war. The galaxy had heard those drums now, and Earth would never be forgotten again.